Welcome to the Astro Narrator, where the universe becomes a story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. That was the first thing Ethan Cross felt. Not new, felt deep inside his bones, long before his eyes could understand it. The wind howled across the frozen wasteland like a wounded animal, carrying whispers that did not sound like language, yet somehow felt intentional. The sky above the Arctic research zone was cracked with unnatural colors. Faint streaks of violet and sickly blue bleeding through the clouds, like reality itself was bruised. Ethan tightened his coat as he moved forward, boots crunching against the ice. His breath came out in sharp, uneven bursts, fogging the visor of his helmet. This storm shouldn't exist, he thought. Not like this. Satellite feeds had gone dark 30 minutes ago. Communications were dead. His team had retreated hours earlier, calling it a malfunction, a false alarm. Ethan stayed that he always stayed, because silence had a way of speaking to him. Then he saw them point two shapes half buried in the snow. At the T first, he thought they were bodies, frozen corpses abandoned by some failed expedition. But as he drew closer, his heart began to pound violently against his ribs. They were alive. Barely. They lay close together, curled inward like mirror images. Their skin was pale, not human pale, but something more luminous, as if moonlight lived beneath it. Frost clung to their hair, which shimmered faintly, shifting colors with each movement of the storm point. One of them opened her eyes, and the world changed. Her gaze locked onto Ethan with terrifying clarity, eyes too deep, too ancient, reflecting stars he had never seen before. Fear, intelligence, pain, all of it layered together in a single glance. She tried to speak, and no sound came out. The other one stirred, her hand instinctively reaching for her sister, fingers trembling not from cold alone, but from something far worse. They were dying. Ethan dropped to his knees without thinking. Hey, it's okay, he whispered, even though he knew they probably couldn't understand him. You're safe. I've got you. The lie tasted bitter. Because nothing about this was safe. As he scanned them with his handheld device. Alarms screamed silently across the display, biological readings that made no sense, cellular structures rewriting themselves in real time, organs arranged in patterns no human anatomy textbook had ever imagined. This isn't evolution, his mind screamed. This is design. The storm intensified. The sky pulsed. And then something happened that would haunt Ethan for the rest of his life. Both sisters looked at him, not with fear, not with desperation, but with recognition, as if they had been waiting for him. But a voice echoed inside his head, not heard, but felt, vibrating through his thoughts like a distant memory that didn't belong to him. You found us. Ethan staggered back, gasping. I didn't, his voice cracked. I don't know how. Another presence joined the first. Softer, heavier, full of sorrow. We were not meant to wake here. But now you are here. The snow around them began to melt. Not from heat, but from distortion, as if reality itself was bending inward. Ethan realized something horrifying. They weren't freezing because of the cold. They were freezing because Earth was killing them. And somehow, they needed him. Not as a savior, not as a hero, but as a bridge, far above them, unseen by human eyes. Something vast shifted behind the clouds. Watching, waiting. Ethan reached out, hands shaking, and wrapped his emergency thermal blanket around both sisters, pulling them close, shielding them from a world that didn't want them. In that moment, without understanding why, he knew one undeniable truth. Finding them was not an accident. Saving them would cost him everything. And choosing them would doom the world he came from. The storm screamed louder. The sky cracked open, and Scene 1 ended with a question that had no right answer. What happens when humanity is no longer alone, and the aliens don't want Earth, they want you? The research station should not have been alive, but the moment Ethan dragged the two sisters inside, he felt it breathing. The door closed behind him, not slowly, not mechanically, but deliberately. The silence inside the station was louder than the storm outside. Every step Ethan took echoed too long, as if the walls were empty, as if something had been removed. He placed the sisters on the medical table. Their bodies were shaking, not from cold, from resistance. The scanners turned on by themselves. The screens began. Showing symbols Ethan had never seen. The data rewrote itself again and again. The system was confused or afraid. The lights flickered red. Emergency glow filled the room, and then everything went dark. 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, Ethan heard breathing, not human, not animal, right behind him. The lights returned. The sisters were sitting upright. Finn stepped back. His heart felt like it would tear through his chest. He had not touched them. He knew that the air grew heavier. The temperature dropped instantly. Frost climbed the walls in repeating patterns, perfect shapes, not natural. The smaller sister turned her head slowly, her eyes focused on nothing. Then her voice entered. Ethan, not through sound, through thought. This place remembers pain. Ethan collapsed to his knees, clutching his head, begging it to stop. The voice remained calm. You are not being invaded. You are being opened. All the screens in the room activated at once. Old footage began playing. The same station decades earlier. Scientists, soldiers, men, and women screaming. A symbol appeared repeatedly, a broken circle with 3 vertical lines. Project Cold Veil. The footage showed bodies frozen from the inside, skin cracking, eyes still moving. Then the sisters appeared, younger, smaller, strapped to a containment frame. Ethan felt sick. They found us first. They tore the sky to pull us here. The taller sister stood, reality bent around her movements. The air vibrated with pressure. We were never meant to survive this world. The station began to shake, not from the storm, from inside. Shadows detached themselves from the walls, not creatures, not forms, absence, places where light refused to exist. One shadow touched metal. The steel, aged, instantly collapsed into dust. Thin understood these were not invaders. They were hunters. What followed us? The cold deepened. Alarm screamed. Ice exploded from the ceiling. Thin ignited a flare. White light flooded the room. The shadows recoiled, silent, violent. The sisters raised their hands. Their eyes burned with something ancient. The air screamed. The shadows were torn apart, dragged somewhere beyond sight. Silence returned. Thin collapsed, shaking. He looked at them. Are you? The smaller sister knelt in front of him. Her expression was heavy with sorrow. We are the reason your species was never alone. The taller sister looked upward. And now they know you have us. Every screen went black. One sentence appeared. Subject contact confirmed. Phase 2 initiated. Thin stared. The truth crushed him. The horror was not what followed. The sisters' horror was what humanity had already done to them. The station did not sleep. Ethan felt at the moment he stood up. The walls hummed softly, a low vibration that never stopped, as if the building was listening, as if it had always been awake. The sisters stood behind him, silent, watching. Thin moved toward the central control room. Every step felt heavier than the last. His hands were shaking, not from fear, alone from realization. The screens came alive before he touched them. Global maps filled the walls, red markers across continents, Arctic and Antarctica deserts, oceans, places no one lived, places no one questioned. The same symbol appeared everywhere. The broken circle, the 3 lines. Cold Veil was not a project. It was a system, a global one. The data streamed faster than Ethan could process. Satellite arrays, deep space sensors, gravitational anomaly trackers, biological containment zones. Humanity had not been searching for aliens. Humanity had been waiting for them. His knees weakened. They knew they had always known. The smaller sister stepped forward. Her presence made the screens flicker. Your species heard us before it ever saw us. Ethan closed his eyes. Radio signals, deep space noise patterns dismissed as background radiation. They were never noise. They were cries. Your leaders followed the sound. They learned where the sky was. Thin images filled the screens, ancient footage, black and white recordings. A tear in the air, reality folding inward. A hole punched into existence. Something came through, not ships, not army survivors. The sisters. Others, not all, survived. Ethan watched scientists celebrate. Then panic, then violence, containment chambers, electromagnetic fields, frozen bodies dissected. While still alive, Ethan's stomach twisted. They did not ask who we were. They asked what we could power. The taller sister raised her hand. The station trembled. Images changed. Entire cities lit from a single reactor. Weapons bending gravity, time dilation tests, human soldiers aging into dust in seconds, all powered by something that screamed us. Ethan's breath came in short, broken gasps. You were batteries, bridges, tools. We were Anchors to what followed. The horror returned to the room. The lights dimmed, shadows gathered again, not attacking, watching. They were closer now. The sisters turned toward them. Their expressions changed, not fear, control. The air thickened. Ethan's ears rang for the first time. Ethan felt it clearly. The sisters were not weak. They had been suppressing themselves to survive, to hide and not tear reality apart. The smaller sister looked at Ethan. We are not individuals. We are nodes. Ethan did not understand, yet the taller sister continued. Our consciousness exists across layers, across places you cannot measure. When we were taken, something broke. The shadows moved closer. The station walls cracked. They are not creatures. They are correction. Ethan's mind snapped into clarity. The universe correcting an imbalance. Aliens removed from where they belonged, used as fuel, as weapons. Reality responding. The shadows were not enemies. They were consequences. Ethan's hands clenched. If you release your power here, you will destroy everything. The sisters looked at each other, then at him. If we do nothing, everything ends anyway. The screens showed the truth. Major cities surrounded by containment grids, hidden evacuation drills, governments preparing not to save humanity, to survive the collapse. Cold Veil Phase 3 global sacrifice zones, billions marked. Without knowing, Ethan's voice broke. You knew this would happen. The smaller sister nodded. And you still brought us here. Ethan's heart shattered. He thought of his team, of the world beyond, the ice, of people who would never know. He thought of himself. You need me because I am human. A bridge, a choice. The taller sister stepped closer. The shadows retreated. Your species will not listen to us. They will listen to Ethan. Laughed, a hollow sound. They will kill Methy, will erase you. They will erase the truth. The sister's hands touched his shoulders. Then let them try. In that moment, Ethan felt everything, not pain, not fear. Connection, stars, distances, layers of existence overlapping. He saw Earth from above, small, fragile, already cracked. He saw Cold Veil control rooms, men giving orders, never questioning. He saw the shadows waiting, patient, and he saw the only path left was not salvation, it was judgment. Ethan's tears froze on his face. If I choose you, there is no going back. The sisters answered together. There never was. The station shook violently. Alarm screamed. Incoming signal detected. Global command override. Cold Veil forces inbound. Minutes away. Ethan's decision solidified. He moved to the central console, placed his hand on the interface. The system resisted, then yielded authorization, accepted. Human anchor engaged. The sisters stepped back. Their forms began to change. Light bled from their skin. Space warped. The shadows knelt. Ethan felt himself stretching across places, across choices. He was no longer just a man. He was the door, and once opened, it could never be closed. The screen displayed one final message. Phase 3 canceled. Phase extinction initiated. Ethan whispered goodbye to a world that had already chosen its fate. The station vanished into white silence, and somewhere far above, Earth felt the first tremor of truth. The collapse did not begin with fire or noise. It began with silent. Satellites went blind one by one. Cities lost their stars as the night sky folded into itself. Oceans pulled back as if afraid to touch the shore. Gravity stuttered across the planet, and people everywhere felt the same sensation of pressure behind the eyes, a whisper without sound. Governments activated protocols they never admitted existed. Armies moved beneath cities. Trains filled with officials and scientists, while civilians were told to remain calm, while nothing above them remained calm. Cold Veil facilities surfaced like scars opening across the world. Towers of black alloy rising from ice deserts, forests, oceans, each one humming with energy stolen long ago from beings that never belonged here. Inside command rooms, men and women screamed orders at screens that showed impossible things. Continents bending, light tearing, storms rotating backward, time itself misbehaving. Humanity resisted with everything it had. Weapons fired into the sky. Missiles vanished mid-flight. Lasers bent away from their targets. Nuclear systems failed, as if refusing to obey something older than command codes. The resistance became desperation. Cities burned not from attack, but from fear. Riots broke out. Borders dissolved. People prayed to gods and sciences that had already turned away. Above it all, the sisters awakened fully, their forms no longer bound by shape or skin. They rose through layers of reality, like memories returning to a forgotten mind. Their presence alone caused the shadows to surge not as enemies, but as witnesses corrections sweeping across the world, erasing cold veil structures, collapsing power grids, unraveling machines that screamed as they died. Every human who had touched the project felt that their guilt pulled outward, exposed, stripped, raw. Ethan existed everywhere and nowhere, at once stretched across the planet bound to the sisters, and to the choice he had made he felt every scream. Every ending, every child asking why the sky was angry. Human resistance reached its final shape, not unity, but defiance, a last broadcast sent across surviving networks, declaring humanity would not kneel, would not surrender. The sisters heard it and wept, because surrender was never asked, only balance, only return. Then the ultimate tragedy unfolded. The shadows descended not violently, but inevitably entire regions went dark, cities vanished into stillness, oceans boiled, then froze. Millions were lost in moments, not as punishment, but as consequence. The sisters screamed as they pulled the weight of their existence back into place, sealing the rupture. Humanity had torn open at the cost of everything. Ethan felt himself breaking, fading, becoming memory, and warning at once. As the sky healed, the storms stopped, the shadows withdrew, and Earth was left scarred, silent, alive, but forever changed. When the sun rose, it rose on a quieter world, one that would never again believe it was alone or innocent. And somewhere beyond perception, the sisters carried the last echo of Ethan Cross, the human who chose truth over survival and paid the price that no history book would ever dare to write. The world did not, and it learned how to breathe again, but every breath hurt. Continents lay quieter than before. Cities stood hollow like shells. After a wave passes, survivors walk streets without sound, afraid that noise might wake whatever had judged them. Skies remained clear, yet people refused to look up, because they remembered when the sky looked back. Children were born into silence, where satellites once sang, where signals once ruled the night. Humanity rebuilt slowly, nervously, knowing now that it was being allowed to exist, not entitled to it. Governments collapsed, then reshaped themselves into councils of apology. Archives were burned, truths were hidden again, but the guilt never left, because something had been seen and could not be unseen. Cold veil was erased from records, but its shadow lived in every scar, every missing city, every ocean trench that should not exist. The horror was not that aliens had come, it was that they had been right. And then the whispers began, not loud, not clear, but persistent. People across the planet began to dream the same dream. A man standing between stars, his face unfinished, his eyes full of loss. He never spoke, but everyone understood him. Some woke screaming, others crying, others calm, knowing that whatever watched them had once been human and had chosen them over himself. Scientists try to explain the phenomenon, calling it shared trauma, residual consciousness, echo bleed, but no explanations stopped the dreams or the fear. Resistance groups formed not to fight, but to prepare, to hide, to run. If the sky ever darkened again, religion returned stronger than before, but fractured. Some worshipped the sisters as saviors, others cursed them as executioners. Cult fires burned at night, prayers screamed into the void, and still the void answered only with memory. Far beyond Earth, the sisters drifted through layers of existence, carrying the weight of a species that could not forgive itself. Their awakening had not ended the danger, only delayed it. Correction was complete, but balance was temporary. Everywhere they went, worlds watched them with fear and reverence, because beings who carried extinction in their wake were never welcomed. Even when they saved you, the sisters felt Ethan within them, not alive, not gone, but stretched into meaning. His choice had bound him to consequence forever. He was now the warning embedded in reality itself. The sisters could feel his pain when humans dreamed of him. They could feel his hope when children looked at the sky without fear. And then one cycle later, something moved again, not the shadows, but something deeper, something that noticed the correction and questioned its. Stars shifted in patterns unseen since before time, and the sisters understood with terror that the universe itself was not finished responding. Ethan felt it too. The echo of his will surged as Earth shook lightly, not enough to destroy, but enough to remind survivors that peace was conditional. The sisters turned back toward the blue world, knowing that to protect it again would mean ending it later. And that was the final cruelty of existence, that love and destruction could be the same act on Earth. Alarms sounded for the first time in years, not of invasion, but of detection, something approaching, something vast. And patient humanity faced the sky together this time, not united, but aware. And in that awareness lay the final horror and the final hope that when the universe returned to judge them again, they would at least understand why. And somewhere in the space between moments, Ethan Cross watched, feeling everything, unable to act, unable to rest, knowing that the end had not been stopped, only postponed, and that the next choice would be even worse than the last. Humanity gathered not in one place, but in a shared moment, a moment where every screen, every signal, every surviving satellite and ground-based array aligned for the first time since the collapse. The sky above Earth changed, not violently, not suddenly, but with terrifying calm. Stars shifted into deliberate geometry, light stretched into slow, breathing arcs, and the presence returned not as invasion, but as certainty. People everywhere felt it, the same pressure behind the eyes, the same understanding. Without language, that something older than fear had arrived. This was not the sisters, this was beyond them. This was the architecture of existence itself, responding to imbalance. And Ethan Cross felt it more clearly than anyone, because he was no longer only a man, he was memory, consequence, and bridge, his consciousness anchored between Earth and the vast layered structure that humans would have once called God or fate or void, but which was simply the universe, correcting a story told wrong for too long. Ethan saw humanity as it truly was, not as nations or cities, but as pulses of light, fragile, loud, temporary. He saw their cruelty and their beauty bound together, inseparable. He saw Cold Veil again, not as buildings or machines, but as intent, the decision to use rather than understand. And he saw the sisters hovering between layers, exhausted, luminous, carrying guilt that was never fully theirs because they had been taken before. They could choose. The universe did not speak in words, it spoke in outcomes, and the outcome approaching was final, not extinction, not salvation, but reset, a narrowing of possibility, a pruning of futures, until only one remained. The sisters turned toward Ethan, knowing this moment had always been coming, knowing their awakening had only delayed it. They offered him the truth. Without ceremony, Earth could be preserved, but not as it was. Humanity could continue, but not with memory of power, not with reach beyond its sky. The cost would be forgetting contact. Forgetting Ethan, forgetting the sisters, forgetting the warning, forgetting the terror, and the lesson. All progress beyond the planet would end forever. Humanity would be alone again, but safe from itself, sealed inside a quiet world, unable to tear the sky again. The alternative was harsher. Earth would remain aware, capable, connected, but watched forever, corrected endlessly until it learned or broke. The universe would not intervene again. There would be no third chance. Ethan understood the cruelty of both paths. One was survival, without growth; the other growth, without mercy. He felt the weight of every human life, alive and unborn, pressing through him, screaming, choosing, without knowing they had chosen. And in that pressure, Ethan finally accepted the truth he had been avoiding from the beginning. The universe did not need a hero, it needed an answer. And he was the only one left who could give it. The sisters waited, terrified of his choice, terrified, because they loved this world, now flawed, loud, destructive, and beautiful. They had learned hope here, and hope was dangerous. Ethan reached inward, beyond memory, beyond fear, to the part of himself that had stayed human. Even after everything, he remembered the first moment he saw the sisters in the snow, dying in a world that did not want them. He remembered the instinct to protect, not because it was logical, but because it was right. And in that memory, he found the answer. He would not choose safety bought with ignorance. He would not choose growth built on endless punishment. He would choose responsibility. He offered himself fully to the universe, not as anchor, not as bridge, but as limit. He would become the seal. Consciousness spread across the threshold that once allowed contact. He would hold the door closed from the inside forever. Humanity would remember enough to fear itself, but never enough to reach again. The sisters would be free to return to their layers, released for being hunted and used, and Earth would remain watched only by a silent guardian who could never speak, never interfere, never rest. Ethan Cross accepted eternity alone as the price for a future that could still choose kindness, the universe paused, evaluating the answer, weighing the cost. And for the first time since existence began, it yielded reality, folded inward, gently sealing the fractures. Stars returned to natural order, signals died, quietly dreams faded from human sleep, children stopped waking afraid of the sky. History rewrote itself, subtly scars remained. But meanings softened. Humanity remembered a disaster, but not its cause, a near extinction, but not its judges. And somewhere beyond perception, Ethan felt himself settle in a stillness stretched thin but stable, a consciousness wrapped around a door that would never open again. The sisters reached for him one last time, gratitude and sorrow flowing through layers that would soon separate forever. Then they were gone, returning to where they belonged, carrying Earth only as memory. The sky cleared completely for the first time in generations, and life continued quieter, slower, humbler, unaware of how close it had come to ending itself. Forever, Ethan remained watching, feeling every sunrise without warmth, every scream without sound, every choice humanity made, unable to guide, unable to warn, but comforted by one thing alone: they were still choosing. And that meant the story was not over, only constrained and far in the deep structure of reality. The universe recorded the outcome, not as victory or failure, but as balance restored through sacrifice. And the name Ethan Cross became something no human would ever speak again, but which existence itself would never forget.